Welcome to Daily Plunge. We are in Jeremiah chapter 11, verses 1 through 17. Jeremiah speaks the word of God to God's people, and he says, tell the people of Judah and those who live in Jerusalem. Now, we breeze over that phrase, but to understand the very fact that they're the people of Judah and Jerusalem means that they are a people that God has blessed, that they have already, their very existence is one of God's grace because he brought them out of slavery and gave them the promised land. So the ground they're standing on, the very foundation of their lives, is a sign of God's covenant faithfulness, that God has delivered on his covenant promises, right? And he says, tell them to listen to the terms of this covenant. They got the land. I've brought them into a promised place, and they're cursed if they don't obey it. And we think, oh, that's so horrible, God, that God would curse them. My friends, if you don't pay your mortgage, even though you're living in the house, you're going to lose your house if you don't keep up your end of the bargain, which is to pay the mortgage. Now, does this mean that they're living by the law? Well, the law is always there. It is always confining those who would break God's covenant. It is always there at work for those who would be opposed to God, enemies of God, evil, wicked, unrighteous. You go on. The list goes on and on. And so that wrath, that law is always there. But to live into God's grace is something you cannot earn. It's just given to you. And they didn't earn the promised land. It was given to them. Now it's a matter of them staying in it, living into this new life of grace that God has given them. And so he says, the terms that I dictated, that I commanded, I brought you out of Egypt, I brought you out of the furnace. You are to do what I command, to walk in the ways that I've promised, so that you can be my people, so that you can have the land of blessing. And the thing is, the terms of this covenant haven't changed. Now, one of the things I need to speak about is how Jeremiah, he began, when he was a young man, was when the reforms of King Josiah happened. And what that only really is about is that they found the book of Deuteronomy and they read it to everybody. And there was a revival of faith amongst the Jewish people. And that was a big influence on Jeremiah. And much of what he writes about are the themes of Deuteronomy. And the first and foremost theme of Deuteronomy is the first commandment. I am the Lord your God. Don't have anyone else before me. And so he is saying to them in verse 7, I warned you people over and over and over again, keep me as your focus. But instead, as it says in verse 9, there's a conspiracy. Oh, is God a conspiracy theorist? Here's what he says. You have an alliance against me. You turn your backs to me. You turn back to the sin of your ancestors. You're serving other gods. You're burning incense to them. You're breaking the terms of the covenant that you are to have no other gods before me. And so he says in verse 11, I'm going to bring disaster. And you're not going to be able to wiggle your way out of this. There's no plan that you're going to come up with. No other God is going to save you. And you're going to cry out, and I won't listen to them. And then he tells Jeremiah, don't pray for them to avoid this wrath, because they've earned it. That they have earned. And the gods that they worship are not going to do anything. They're going to be powerless. And then he goes on in verse 15. He says, my beloved are in my house, in my temple, and they're making evil schemes. Where they should be loving me, they're plotting against me. And, where they were once a beautiful olive tree, now all they hear is this mighty storm, the fire against it, and how they're going to be broken because they won't hear me. Thanks, friends. Have a blessed day.